Welcome to the Nehemiah Entrepreneurship Community Podcast. I'm your host, Patrice Tsague with Susan Schramm. I'm actually here at a Delta Lounge in Portland, Oregon. It's my second home, actually. The place for somebody that said they knew you by name. This is my cheers right here. I'm on my way to the committee plan trustee meeting. Normally we're a week apart, but for some reason we fell on the same week this year. So literally, I'm going to be there tomorrow morning for the trustee meeting starting tomorrow evening. I'm actually going to miss the business plan competition, which is one of my favorite events because it's during the same time. I just come in and say great to everybody. So I'm at Portland Airport. For those of you in Portland, I'm one of the best airports in the world, actually. You have a great staff here. And so Nehemiah Week, we just finished. Listen, if you've not yet registered, you want to do that right now. We have 3 more days left. And the good news is that there are some free events coming up. So we only have one paid event. So if you're not registered, you want to do that for tomorrow's event, which is our investment forum, which is actually where you get a chance to learn how do you position yourself to raise capital from Kingdom Impact investors. You'll hear from real life investors, how they've done it, what kind of questions, what kind of things you need to prepare for, kind of like our own Shark Tank. You also hear some great speakers. You hear from myself. You hear from Edward Fitzpatrick with IOLXCX, a new trading platform to raise capital through a concept called revenue-based financing, where you actually get royalties versus interest or equity. It's a different concept. So then I did a lot of research on this concept, and what I discovered is that it's not a new, it's not a new concept, but it's never been scaled. And I'll give you a little history in a minute. But then, so we're going to have that. We're going to have Tim Abel from the Lions Den. He's going to talk. Lions Den raises capital for Christian entrepreneurs around the country, around the world. And then we also going to have a pitch from a business, which I'm personally invested in, called ILM Oregon. So that's tomorrow. So go right now to nehemiahweek.com and sign up so you can be a part of that. The good news is if you sign up for the whole week, it's only $99. You will get a chance to get all the recordings for all the weeks. Right, so you've not missed anything. So you can join tomorrow. You can get a day pass for only $25 and sign up tomorrow. If you can't do that, Friday's event is free, and Saturday's event is free. You want to sign up for that as well. But let me give you guys a recap for today. So, Susan, today was the climax for the 2-day conference, and it did not disappoint. Pastor Noah kicked it off. You got really excited about his message. What do you think?
So first of all, we start the morning with our pastor being beamed in from France and translated. And for those of us, we were in a global conference with people from all over the world in multiple languages. And many times, those of us in English don't get the experience of what translation's about. And so I think it was almost like a wonderful reminder of the fact that God's got a big world and he's got a lot of people, and it's like sometimes it's the Tower of Babel, but we all have to understand each other. So he was speaking in French and getting translated into other languages. He talked about the 5 P's of being called to business, and it was very memorable, but very helpful, and it built on yesterday's conversation. So he talked about your call is predestined, like this happened in your, when you were in the womb, you were being created to have this calling. And it's personal. It's not for anybody else. It's specifically for you. And it requires preparation, and things like biblical entrepreneurship training are imperative. You don't just sort of have a calling and, wing it. You have to do some work for it. And then the 4th P was to be productive. This isn't something you do passively. It's something that you actually engage in. And then the last point he was making was don't forget that it's a promise of God that this calling puts you in a position to be really walked with, because God's got the promise for you. It was a really wonderful moment. We were just talking to one of the guys on the staff, and he was saying, I couldn't believe it. I was listening to him talk, and I was translating it from French and English into Spanish, and I kept going, wow, this is so important. So yeah, it was a very great way to start the day, and we really appreciate Pastor Noel. moments.
Yes, and he had two other P's after promise, which was providence and provision. He could
Yeah.
have had six P's there. It was
Yes.
incredible.
Yeah.
I do want to give a shout out to my local church, Manor House. Listen, if you are watching us right now, you're listening, you're from Manor House. Listen, Pastor Mark, Pastor Daryl, Pastor Dylan, and all Pastor, the other Pastor Mark, and all the pastors, the elders. Thank you. I texted my pastor and I said, I don't feel like an orphan anymore because I've been part of many churches, and many times I'm part of a church where it's more about what I can do for the church and not so much about what the church can also do for me or for Nehemiah outside of the walls of the church. And this church, Susan, my pastors are all in, right? All in, and it's just been incredible. It's different. Gotta get used to it, right? And so it's just been fun there. We're friends, we're family, but also we're partners, both in and outside of the church. So Manor House, shout out to you. You are doing it. And I told during that panel today, Manor House, the biggest complaint was the church.
Mhm.
And I said to them, come to Manor House so you can see a model of how a church works with marketplace leaders. So don't disappoint me because next year we're going to bring folks at Manor House so we can show off a little bit for in Jesus' name.
Well, and so what they did was, so he didn't mention that we had the Manor House worship team start
That's
the
right.
day, and it was interesting because here we are from the west coast of the United States all the way to France. It was just, I loved it. I loved the fact that we were so dimensional and starting worshiping so nicely. So, as is typical, I said to my family here, I love this conference because it's the only conference I've ever been into in the business world where you start the day with worship and a message. Like it sets the whole tone. So it was really good.
I think you were made for us because you actually had some experience with Willow Creek, and you were part of that shaping the global thing you all did over there. So
Global, yeah,
it
global
was predestined.
creation. Yeah, it's all part of a global model. Yep.
That's right. And then the next speaker was one of our best. And
Yes.
I'm just saying it.
Yeah.
Susan brought it on.
No,
So
Robert
Susan,
McCoy was next.
oh no, before that, I'm so sorry, Robert Fouquet. That's right. Robert shared his journey. And this was interesting because Robert taught you in biblical entrepreneurship, he coached you, and he was on our board at the time that you were kind of coming through. And so tell us a bit about what you think about his talk and the tie-in between him laying that foundation, his journey, and you de-risking it, given that he brought you into the system.
So Robert Fukui is a guy from corporate who worked in the pharmaceutical industry in sales and marketing, and then he ended up moving into becoming an entrepreneur. And I think what was powerful about his story was he called it a purpose-led journey, but the fact is, his point was you never really know where it's going, but it's
Mm,
the convergence of what happens is for a reason, that it creates continuous opportunities. And he shared his own journey, which clearly was, I'd never actually heard it framed so vulnerably, where
mm,
he grew up in a pastor's home and there was his father was just so busy with the church that often he didn't have enough of him. And that and then he ended up losing his wife in an accident. And he ended up finding over time that his mission, his call, had to do with the intersection of marriage and business. That the idea
mm,
of having business impact and having outcomes outside the home needs to be balanced with a strong marriage. And he and his wife Kaylee now have this business that actually helps couples balance their strategy if they're working in business together. And I feel like the thing that hit me, having known him now for years as my coach, was he always talked about the fact that don't get hung up if it's not going well, because there's something about this moment in the journey. It doesn't have to be
mm.
the end come. The end game is not as important as the journey. And that's a pretty darn powerful idea and comforting, actually. Sort of
Mm.
every stage of the journey has a reason. So it's great.
Well said, well said. And that laid a foundation for you to not talk about, okay, let's say that you are a Robert and you wanted to risk your own journey, right? Because it's full of risk. You on our board and you know the risk that we take,
Mhm.
right?
Well,
20 plus years later,
right. Every
you
single
know.
what we talk about is every journey, whether you're going to climb Mount Everest or
That's
you're
right.
going to take a family vacation or you're going to start a business. Every bit of it is a journey, and journeys have risk. And so my focus was to have an honest discussion and say, you know what, let's be open about the fact that risk has positives and
Mm,
negatives. You can try to protect things from not happening and try to be smart about how to protect your assets. And you also have to recognize that there's windows of opportunity that if you're not prepared for, you have the risk that you're going to miss them. And
mm,
I just I this is how I consult organizations in launching big, important, high stakes strategies. And I applied some of those into our conversation and left everybody with 4 ideas, which was the first is to be prepared. Like for the first idea was be spiritually prepared, because a lot of times people jump into it and aren't really emotionally ready to walk with God through it. They're sort of trying to do it for God, but not necessarily with God. And so that's the mindset. And then the second thing obviously was to make sure that you know your why. Sometimes businesses um, are really clearer about their what, the thing they want to make, the thing they want to deliver, the way they want to deliver it, but they're not clear on why they're doing it. And that puts them at
mm,
risk, because when things don't go well, they get lost. So that's this idea of knowing your business problem knowing the problem your organization's trying to solve, or your career. Know what you're trying to solve so that you can adjust when things disrupt you. And then the third one was what I was doing right there, which was talking about risk, because a lot of people, I think especially CEOs and founders, somehow feel that if you talk about the risks, that you sound like you're not in charge or you're somehow haven't thought of something. And I find as an investor and as even as a follower, as an employee, it was, if you don't openly talk about what could go wrong, then it just sort of creates anxiety in your brain, or even anxiety that you'll miss windows. And so having a rhythm of talking about risk, which I teed up these ideas of a pre-mortem and a
mm,
what if workout, were ideas that I proposed. Um, and then the last thing, at the end of the day, was to be in community, because so much about it, de-risking is a team sport. It takes
mm,
multiple perspectives. You come at it with one lens and you say, I've got it. But it's the multiple perspectives that really help. And that's, I think, what we do well with Nehemiah community is we have people who have walked in all different stages of business and walked in all different issues, and coaching can help and community can help. So de-risking to me is sort of a basic block and tackle skill to make sure
wow.
you're calling.
I want to deal with two things you said. One, let's go back a bit. You didn't make this point just now, but I thought it was a good point you made earlier today, which had to do with the fact that when you talk about de-risking, it's different when we are living out a calling. Because you elaborate on that. I thought that was a powerful point.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think when I talk in the secular world about de-risking, there's a lot of dimensions. But when you're purpose led, you feel a responsibility that's bigger than you, right? And in our where we have 4 dimensions that we see. Clearly, you want to make a business that's viable and produces revenue and is profitable, but we want to be good to the people that we're with. We wanted to be good with the planet that we're on, and we have an eternity. We have a call that has, how do we impact eternity with our businesses and our careers? Not simply how do we get stuff done, but
Mhm.
what's unexpected is that actually creates a new kind of sort of imposter syndrome, a new kind of worry that you're somehow, if you fail or make a mistake, you're failing God. And it's a heaviness. It's great, but it's a heaviness. The great news is you also get God as your partner. He's so you're doing the good news is that you're walking with him. The bad news is sometimes you feel a sense of almost guilt or deficiency, because you know how important the stakes are. So yeah, it's a pretty heavy topic to have in the middle of the morning.
Ah, it's good. And then, of course, my favorite for you was the community dimension. And this is why we at Nehemiah Entrepreneurs Community, we love our community, because you're right. being in community mitigates the risk, minimizes it, but it also makes you, because you need somebody to lean on, right, when you have those failures, or those events that come across as failures that are learning lessons in the community. But I want to talk about your book a little bit, because you do have a book coming out next year, and so when you think about your thought today and the anticipation of the book coming out, what can our audience expect as they anticipate getting their first copy of that book?
Okay, so the book working title today, we'll see how it comes out, is called Fast Track Your Strategy: How to De-risk, Align, and Communicate Your Big Idea. And I'm writing it specifically for people who are purpose-led, who have a big idea in their head, or have an organization already, and they're frustrated because it's not going fast enough. And what I find is a lot of times people have skipped some real basic and made common mistakes. And so what I've done is sort of packed it full of specific tactics of things you can do to avoid common mistakes to speed your journey. And so it'll be a practical, it's punchy, and it's short because I know people that I'm talking to don't have a long attention span. But it also will be a practical resource so that even if, especially if you've already launched and you're struggling because it's stuck, it's something you can go back to and use to help sort of revisit and say, okay, I need to get back on the rails. What do I need to do? So that's what it's for. And I'll be looking, right now I'm having it go through editing, and I look forward to sharing it with this community very much. It will be fun.
So, would you come back on the podcast and talk about the book once it's getting ready to come out?
Yeah, oh, for sure. That'd be a great opportunity.
We look forward to it. And then, so after you lay the foundation, Nick Vujicic, Voyages, that's right, Voyages. Nick was next. You know, his whole life is risk,
Yeah.
and so Nick, I mean, he just was so powerful. He gave us his personal journey, both in terms of him being
For those who
born.
know Nick, if you did know him well, you've seen him in the faith community communicate. He's was born with a disability. He had no arms and no legs when he was born, and he has become the arms and legs and the feet of Christ in his life when he figured out that actually he was uniquely called to tell a story of hope. And so what was different about today's conversation is he also told the story of when he figured out that business played a role, that actually, that, making money was a good thing because you could use money to make an impact in the world. And I thought that was a neat rest of the story to understand. He's got like 6 companies and working in AI, and just he has a really dimensional story. But I found his reminder that we sometimes have a view that your calling is over here's your calling and over here's business and money. And he early on figured out that resourcing important things in the world requires profitable businesses. And so he saw them together. And I thought that was a really helpful and inspiring part of his story.
And by the way, Nick will be back on Saturday for our State of the Ministry event, where we're going to talk about celebrating the impact that Nehemiah is having around the world, and invite you to join in with us and partner with us financially to kind of push that forward. So if you're not yet signed, and that's a free event, you can just go right into NehemiahWeek.com and sign up and register and be a part of that event. And then after Nick, we had my friend Jeff Van Duzer, a gentle soul, is he not?
Oh my gosh! So he was the former. What was his title?
Former dean,
Dean,
provost, assistant dean,
and he's
provost.
head
That's
of the
right.
business school.
Head of the business school. That's right.
And so so it was amazing, and he's so thoughtful. He shared just a little tiny bit about this idea of how God sees business. And I thought, one takeaway was he said, I think one of God's mission statements about business would be that business exists to provide opportunities for individuals to express their God-given identity in meaningful work. And it was just sort of an interesting idea. And he drew from Genesis. He went from the word. He was amazing that we were made for work. It's not like we're all supposed to sit here, on vacation. We were made to work, and our work is about of returning relationship. It's about relationship, not just things. And that matters to God. I thought that was really calm and wonderful, and that profit is just a means to attract capital and create jobs to do God's work. It's not the end goal. So really good context.
I could hear Jeff talk all day long. As a matter of fact, Jeff is my personal coach, and I'm just grateful for the time that he gives in guiding me along. Jeff, for those of you in the Portland, Oregon area, Jeff will be, or Washington, Jeff will be with us here in Vancouver, Washington in October as we have our impact event here. So be on the lookout for that. We'll let you know as we get closer, so you can sign up and come to the event and help and hear Jeff out. Then we conclude with a panel. And so tell us about, what were your thoughts
Why
on
do you
this
set
panel?
context? Set context for this panel versus yesterday's panel, and why we did it this way.
Yeah. So because our theme is called to the marketplace, we want to have two kinds of panel. One, what we call the pioneers panel. These are people who launch into this space, really pioneered the space 30 to 40 years ago. Right. So they were early in the game. They helped set the stage, and many of them contributed to what we experienced. In this case, yesterday was Oz Hillman, Michael Pink, James Lockett from ICC, and Marketplace Chaplain. And then we also, by the way, had in mind to invite FCCI and C12. These are some of the guys from way back. Full Gospel, another group. So that was yesterday. So looking at how it started, what they've seen evolve, and what they're doing now. Today was those who have been in within the last 20 years. So those who we call the newbies, those who came in later, just as Nehemiah did. We were in 1995. That was actually, we're kind of in the cross, the middle. And so today we had Shay Bine, Chuck Prophet, we had Andy Mason and Dale Davis.
And
Crystal.
Crystal.
So it's about,
and Crystal too.
And Crystal as well from the Christian Chamber. So it's about seeing their perspective of how this new generation is contributing to the movement, how they're collaborating with each other. But more important than that, what they're seeing God's doing in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was like being. They were so enthusiastic about each other. That was really quite exciting, because each of them had a journey where they were really placing both feet in this idea of work and faith are create powerful outcomes. And that idea a lot of the time resulted in one theme that I thought was interesting was their frustration with the church, because
Yes.
they said, the church itself often sort of makes the silo. And so this is why our Sustainable Church Initiative is so interesting, because they're learning that as they work in all different kinds of things, everything from helping communities bring business people together who want to accomplish something. For instance, it's Chuck, who works in the city of Cincinnati, who he's got this whole all different
That's right.
organizations working together to accomplish outcomes. And Crystal working with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And in every case, though, as they looked at their strategy, all of them said, I need to work with someone else. I need to collaborate for this to really have true impact. And the collaboration and ecosystem theme was really palpable. I mean, every one of them felt like everything about their strategy didn't make sense unless they were really humbly open to working with other people and knowing that sometimes, they did the same thing, but often they complement each other. And in God's vision, it was all good. Like flowers grow, let the flowers bloom. At the end of the day, we're all here to affect something important. So hi, Jennifer. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Jennifer.
So it's I think, to me, that was my biggest takeaway. Ecosystems of people working together are critical if we're going to actually make an impact in our businesses. And that takes humility, because sometimes the classic, I can remember interviewing, part of my business was researching investors and funders. And the first thing they all said when I said, what do you wish people knew when people came to you for funding? They said, I sure wish you knew your niche. Why? The question is, why do you have to create this on top of what all is already out there? Why don't you just help somebody else be stronger? And I just heard that today again, that know your niche and know what part you bring, and then be very collaborative with everybody in the marketplace that you're working with. And it's okay if you might sort of sound the same some days. Figure out how to work together. So that's what I took away. You were doing the panel, so you might, what were you?
No,
You were
you,
moving very fast. So
you said it well, right? Gina says she loved this energy. Babe, Gina actually watches our show. So I'm not boring to my wife. She's actually watching right now. So I love this energy and collaboration with today's next gen marketplace panel. I felt like we were at a coffee shop hearing them share. You said the same thing yesterday
yeah.
with the I was gonna say the old folk, the old folk with the pioneers.
Pioneers, yeah. It just listening to them, and Gina's
Mhm.
point is correct. Listening to them sort of build on each other's ideas. And so
Yeah.
genuinely, here they all have different ministries, different businesses, not just ministry, marketplace ministries, but they're so genuinely respectful and delighted with each other. And I know, Patrice, that I have to give you huge credit because you curated these, and you do that. You have a very open attitude about where Nehemiah entrepreneurship community fits in the ecosystem of helping businesses live out faith. And I feel like we're going to be stronger as an organization the more open and encouraging and collaborative we are. So it was like a workshop. And for startups, I think that's hard because you struggle all the time to figure out why you. And
That's
every
right.
time someone says a word that sounds like something you do, you think of them as a competitor, you
That's
know.
right.
So it was a really good instructive
You
session.
know, for me, uh, Susan, I remember when I started, and I wanted somebody to bring me into the to the door.
Me too.
You know, so in
Yeah,
a sense, I'm living out what I wish somebody would have done for me.
right.
And but I also have a great board like yourself as chair and the other board members, where our board is very open minded. We're not hoardy, and that helps because you can't have this kind of vision when the board is out of sync with it,
Mhm.
right? We think abundance and not scarcity, and
That's
and and that's that. We live out what we preach, right? We must, otherwise we be hypocrites.
That's right. Well, it's a constant calling though. And I
That's
can remember
right.
being at trade shows with big tech firms and seeing all these banners, and we all sort of sounded alike. And you could get pretty depressed thinking, my
That's
God,
right.
we're spending all this money, we're showing up and we all make the same stuff. And the issue came down, it wasn't the differentiation only with the what of what you make. It might
Mm,
be that you differentiate with the audience you work with or with the
that's right.
people on your team or
That's
with the
right.
process you used, you know? So I think it was, yeah, you're right. Let's walk the talk, right?
Amen. Amen. Miriam said, "Great panel, great. Love it." By the Miriam is our leader in Puerto Rico, right?
Mhm.
She's Miriam. We got to do Puerto Rico in
Yeah,
2024. You know,
let's
you
do
got to
that too.
invite Susan and I. You got to invite. By the way, Susan is the Hispanic. She's like all Spanish, all about Spanish. So
I'm
so
all
we're
about
gonna do Puerto
growing
Rico.
our Hispanic
That's right.
love that we're
That's
open in Puerto Rico and we have such a
right.
large Hispanic community.
And
So
when we come, have us on the beach. All right. We're not coming to suffer for Jesus. We're coming to enjoy, to
yeah,
enjoy.
okay.
All right. So Gina says that Gina said you've done a wonderful job emceeing. There were so many takeaways from today, and one that stood out to me from on that stood out to me from Pastor Noel's devotion was if we don't prepare to walk out God's call on our lives, we will spend all of our time repairing. Susan, as we close right now, so you have done your assignment. We won't see you again until probably Saturday. You may be sticking in you go to somewhere else. You know,
Ending.
we're not the only love in your life. You know, we we love to think we're the only one. We're the only one. So before you share your closing thoughts, though, now every year you say, Patrice, is my last year. Next year is technology, Susan. This next can be your last year. That's your thing,
Yeah, next
right?
year,
So
what's how have you framed next year? It's about
kingdom, technology, and innovation. Kingdom, innovation, and technology. So
kingdom
you can't.
innovation.
You have to come back. That's your gig.
It really is.
So
And
so
and if you sign up right now, if you're part of the community, you get next year's conference for
that's right. Only
$40.
$49.
So
So
I gotta
Susan,
sign up.
I'm putting pressure on you on air.
Yeah,
We
me
have
too.
you for another year of MC. You cannot not MC on technology. Come
Okay.
on.
Okay, I'm in. I'm all in.
All right. All right. So yeah, so Susan, why should they come to the next couple of days?
So the next couple of days, with 3 days, investor forum, then the business plan competition, and then the state of the ministry and the impact we're having around the world, right? So why would you come? Because if you have any sense that you're called in any way to either work for a business that has a call, or be in a new business and start it yourself, these are the people who are going to help fund and support you. And so what's fun is you get to sort of have a ringside seat to listening in on how investors and funders and donors think about success and the criteria they use. And then you get to watch other organizations present their story in a concise way as to why their organization should be invested in. And I just think we have the secular version is a Shark Tank, and you can learn a lot by watching it. But what's interesting is to see people openly talk about that balance between a good, solid, profitable business and a faith-centered, called, purpose-led business. And I think this could be its own little MBA. So that's why you come. And tomorrow you can buy just to one day?
One day pass.
And then otherwise on Friday and Saturday, it's free, and you can come. Everybody can come if they're registered. It'd be so much fun to have everybody here.
Well, Susan, I'm going to miss you. Thank you so much. We don't mind sharing. You have a big heart. Though, that kids, there's always this jealousy, whenever you're doing something, one child versus the other, but we are called to be open-hearted. Well, Susan, since your last day, I want you to pray for it. Before you do, though, listen, guys, if you enjoyed this podcast, I want you to share it, share with your friends, share with your family, post it, repost it on your social media so others might be able to glean from it. And if you desire to be part of the conference, want you there, I'll go right now to NehemiahWeek.com and sign up for tomorrow. It's only $25. We have a one-day pass, or for the week where you can have all the recording. Or you can just sign up for the free events on Friday and Saturday and join us. You're going to get the chance to experience Nick for free. Okay, and you wouldn't want to miss that. Susan, could you close in prayer, please?
Well, thank you. And thank you for the privilege of being part of this. Lord, thank you for this moment. You have called us to serve you in every one of our lives. Every single day, we're called to make an impact. It's not like we have to be perfect. You've made us uniquely. You've given us hope. You've given us an opportunity to be on a journey. Thank you for walking with us on this journey in community with others who truly do know that you are our saving. You are the future of what we're here for. And you give us gifts that we never imagined, and have a plan for us that's bigger and greater and more fantastic than we could imagine. Thank you for today, and for Patrice for leading us through this. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. God bless you all. See you tomorrow.